When they go to the Kaaba, they have to go to the Kaaba and circumambulate around it. This is when they have to make the sacrifice. The neck has to be cut, and it is done as swiftly as possible.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another interview show. And today we are going to be talking about Eid al-Adha. You're gonna
Al-adha, yes.
All right. So we're gonna be talking about all about that today. And for anyone who may not know what that is, we're going to get a lot of answers because I'm sure people have a lot of questions when they see things on social media around this time. I've already seen news articles about it. So we're going to see what it truly is all about. Starting with introductions, though. Let's introduce our guest. Feel free to introduce yourself.
Sure. Well, first of all, my name is Rauf Zaman. I'm the Imam at the MCMC, which is a Muslim Center of Middlesex County, located in Piscataway, New Jersey. What more?
That's good. That's good.
Okay.
All right. So thank you for coming on. I'm very glad to have you. And being an Imam and stuff, I'm sure you're well studied on the scriptures of Islam, so this should be
I've done some
very
studies.
insightful. Let's just start off with something very basic. What is, again, correct me if I'm wrong, Eid al-Adha?
Adha.
Eid al-Adha.
Okay.
I'll work on it.
We'll take that. It's comprised. This phrase, Eid al-Adha, is comprised of two words, Arabic words. The first word is Eid. More people may be familiar with that word, Eid, which means basically a festival. In Islam, there are two religious festivals, major, that everyone celebrates. And one of them is the Eid that comes immediately after the month of Ramadan, which is the month of fasting. The day that begins the next month. Of course, we're talking about the Islamic year, so each month has its own names and so on. I don't want to complicate things for you by giving you all the names. So we celebrate that occasion at the end of the month of fasting. So that's an Eid. It is called Eid al-Fitr. And that is, Fitr means the breaking of the fast or the end of the fast, the festival that comes at the end of the fast. And this one that we are entering into is called Eid al-Adha, the festival of the sacrifice. Adha means sacrifice. And this is commemorating the sacrifice that Abraham started, peace be upon him and peace be upon all of the prophets. He was called to sacrifice his son, as you know, the story is common in both the Bible as well as the Quran. And he was about to do so. He fulfilled all of the steps to make that sacrifice. And when he was at the very last point, just before he passed the knife over the throat of his son, he was told to stop, don't go ahead. But a ram was provided for him, and that's what he sacrificed instead. So Muslims celebrate that occasion and commemorate it by doing a sacrifice. It is also around the time of the Hajj or pilgrimage. So perhaps you would have heard a lot of talk about the pilgrimage and the amount of people who go there, that is to Mecca. Right now, actually the Hajj or the pilgrimage, the procedures, the days of the pilgrimage have already started. Started with Monday today. And they are before us, right? So they are already started it several hours before. And they will proceed to do some rituals. There are not many rituals. They have to stay on Monday, this day. They have to stay in a place that is called Mina, which is outside of Mecca. And there they just engage in worshiping God. And then when the next day comes, and of course are performing the 5 daily prayers as usual and so on, and making a declaration that all of the prayer, all of the pilgrims make, and that is labbaik Allahumma labbaik, here I am, O God, here I am, here I am. That is, I'm at your service. There is no other God but you. You have no partner, and so on. The kingdom, sovereignty belongs to you. And that declaration is made over and over throughout the entire day. Except, of course, when they will have to do other things, whether it is eating or, and the regular five daily prayers and so on. And so then, when it comes to the next day, as soon as the morning prayer is finished, which is just before sunrise, they will start getting ready to go to another place that is called Arafat. There's a hill there, and there's a huge plain there. So all of the pilgrims, and in these days we hear that there are about 2.5 million who are there. All of them will go there. So sometimes the transportation can be very difficult. I think they have put some fast trains in and that sort of thing. So that makes it a bit easier these days. I have not, I've been there earlier, so I had the the difficult times. Now it's getting a bit easier. But they will stay in Arafat, in the surrounding areas of that hill, for almost until sunset. And then, and again, just engaging in prayer, maybe reciting the Quran, just studying the Quran, reciting it, and so on, and engaging in prayer. And what we call dhikr. Dhikr means literally, remembrance. So remembrance of God, and that is by reciting various phrases in Arabic that glorify Him and praise Him and so on. So they engage in that for the entire day, take some time off to have their meals and so on. And then at the end of the day, just at the time of sunset, they will leave from there and go to a third place, which is called Muzdalifah. And they will spend the night in Muzdalifah. And very early again, they will arise and prepare for the dawn prayer. They will pray that prayer, and then they will head back to Mina, the first place that I call, and close by is some symbols that are there, right? 3 symbols that signify the devil. And they will pelt those to indicate that they're rejecting the devil and all that he stands for, and his whisperings to mankind and so on, trying to get them to become corrupt and deviate from the true path and so on, right? So that is what they do, and then they will continue to do that for the next 2-3 days. It's just a short period of time that they will spend out of the entire day doing that. And then after doing that, this is on the morning of the 10th of the last month of the Islamic year. This is the day that we call the day of the festival. This is the festival day.
Okay. So this is the official day of the festival of the sacrifice.
Yeah, the festival itself, but all the rituals of the sacrifice, as you would have seen, start before that, a couple of days before that.
Okay.
All of the things that they were doing, which is on the 8th and then the 9th in Mina, and then Arafat, and then they go to Muzdalifah. There's all different rituals of the Hajj. So when they stone those symbols of Satan, they come back to Mecca. It's a little distance. You have to, if you're walking, it will take almost an hour maybe to walk.
How do they house, like you said, 2.5 million people are going on this pilgrimage? How do they house all those people, accommodate for them? What does that look like?
Well, there are many hotels in Mecca, So they would be staying there. The primary stay would be in those hotels. Mina, when they go to Mina on the morning of the 8th of the month, right? There are many tents. It's a huge area, huge plain, flat land and so on. There are no trees or anything. Maybe it's hilly in various parts, but there are sufficient flat lands for them to have the tents. And so, in fact, these tents are these days built in advance. They're made in advance. So when a person, when the group, because they usually travel in group, when they go there, these tents are already prepared for them. So they will go into their assigned tents, and they will be there more or less for the entire day. Well, you don't remain, in seclusion in the tent itself. You can come out, walk around, and so on. Stretch your legs and whatever. But they will remain in that area. So there's a lot of accommodation.
Okay.
And see, the Saudi government has also built a lot of bathrooms, and of course that is essential. You have so many millions of people, right? So you must have the facilities for that. So all of those, washroom facilities and flowing water and so on is there, which I think that they erected just before the Hajj, and they dismantled all of that again. At least a lot of it. Some of the structure remained there in place for the next year, but a lot of the things are dismantled and then reassembled again when the next year comes. But all of the facilities are there. And Arafat, on the next day, going to Arafat on the next day, it's a mountainous area, a hilly area, but there are also huge plains. So there's enough room for people to be there, and they will be in tents again because you have to be in tents. You can't stay out in the sun, in the hot sun, for the entire day, right? So there are tents that are there. Again, the structures are there, and just before the Hajj, the authorities would put in all of the details in it, and make sure that the water is flowing and so on. So they'll be able to stay there. So there's enough space there. I think they can probably accommodate many more millions of people.
Yeah, but then let's go back to the festival, the sacrifice. What goes on that day?
Now, the festival of the sacrifice is that on that specific day, which is the 10th of the Islamic month, when they finish most of the rituals of the Hajj, this is when they have to make the sacrifice. There is when they go to the Kaaba, they have to go to the Kaaba and circumambulate around it, and then there are two hills nearby, a reasonable distance away from each other, and they have to go between these, almost running, not completely running, sort of walking at a fast pace between the two. These are called Safa and Marwa. And so they go between that 7 times, starting at Safa, and so they end up at Marwa, and so that completes the rituals of the main rituals of the Hajj. They will either shave their head at that time, completely, or just cut their hair short. That's part of the sacrifice.
Just for men, or is that
for the men? For the women, they will cut just a tiny pice of the hair, right? And then they go to do the sacrifice of the animal. Again, these days, all of that is catered for, so many people do not have to actually go and do the sacrifice themselves. There are others who will do it for them.
Does it have to be a ram, like in the Abrahamic account, or can it be a different animal?
It can be a different animal. There are several different animals that are permissible. There are what you call the cattle. So they range from the sheep and goats, and cows, and anything of the family of the cows, right? Anything like that, as well as camels. So these are the animals that one can sacrifice. If one is sacrificing a sheep or a goat, It's one per person, more or less. If you're sacrificing something bigger than that, a cow or a camel, then you can have 7 shares in those bigger animals. In other words, 7 people can come together and sacrifice one of those animals.
And what does this sacrifice look like, and what is then the animal used for?
Generally speaking, whenever we slaughter an animal, for consumption, we have to do it in a particular way. The neck has to be cut, the jugular vein, and the other things, the pipes or whatever we call it,
arteries?
The other arteries, and so they have to be cut. So that, and it is done as swiftly as possible.
Yeah.
The knife has to be as sharp as possible, and so it's done quickly. There is very, very little pain to the animal. Although we hear that people object to this killing of animals and so on, but really the way it is done Islamically, there's very little pain to the animal. It is done very quickly, and then the blood flows out.
Yep.
So we have to allow all of the blood as much as possible to flow out from the animal. We do not consume blood.
Yeah.
Right? So then after that, the animal is cut up, skinned and cut up and so on. And usually, right there, there are those people who are the cooks and so on who will cook part of it, and many, if not all of the pilgrims will have a taste of the animal that they sacrificed.
Okay.
And it may last them for several days. Also, they may continue to eat from it for several days. For those who are not on the pilgrimage, like ourselves here, we try to make a sacrifice also. It is strongly recommended. And then we would distribute the meat. We would consume some of it ourselves and save, maybe freeze it up so we can use it over a period of time. And then we would also distribute a portion. It's almost like 1/3, 1/3, 1/3.
Okay.
1/3 for ourselves, another third for family and friends, and then another third for the poor. Generally, it's not an exact thing, right? But generally speaking, 1/3 should go to the poor, and that would be more difficult to do, in Mecca and the surrounding areas, right? Because nobody is at home.
How's that done here in the States? I'm just imagining what that could look like with maybe, I don't know, food laws or anything like that, or safety, health concerns, or anything with the meat not reaching this destination in time. Like how do you distribute that efficiently to the poor?
There are collection centers. Our mosque here is a collection center for the meat.
Okay.
So anybody who wants, we have several freezers, and whoever wants to make that contribution, and they will bring the meat and leave it there, and then later on others will pick it up and take it around to the needy people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And they can come and pick up from here also, right? We usually publicize it, that we have the meat here. Anybody who wants to.
So it's almost like a food bank, except it's not canned goods. It's
the fresh meat. Yeah, it's the fresh meat, and so all of it will be gone within a day or two.
Okay.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The sacrifice can be made not only on the day of the sacrifice itself, the festival day, which is the 10th of the month, but one can do the sacrifice on the 3 following days also.
Mm-hmm.
That is rarely done. Most people prefer to do it on the first day, the day of the festival, and then once they have done that, and if they are able to do it early enough, because it takes time. One has to go maybe to a butchery, and the butchers there will help them to do the sacrifice. If a person doesn't have any experience in that, it may be difficult for him to do it, right? Mm-hmm. Even the passing of the knife over the throat of the animals and so on. One has to have a skill in doing it.
Yes, my family has been done hunting and stuff for years, and skinning, all that stuff. There's a whole skill to
right.
it.
You have to have the skills. So those who cannot do it, and they will get the help of butchers. And they may go to a butchery or the slaughterhouse where the butchers actually do their slaughtering and so on. Or they may go to a farm. And there are many farms here in New Jersey. And people make arrangements with the farm. They perhaps select the animals that they're going to slaughter beforehand. And so immediately after the prayer, there's an early prayer for the 10th, the day of the festival, right? So when that prayer is done, and like we have one of those prayers starting at 6 o'clock, and by 7 o'clock everybody can be out of here, right? So they go to the farms, and they may have to wait their turn if there's a long line for the other people. They may have to wait their turn, and when the turn comes, they either themselves or the people in the farm themselves, because they are more skilled in handling the animals. They help in the slaughtering and skinning of the animals and so on, cutting them up. So people will take away all of that, the meat, in order to distribute it. Most of us, as soon as we leave the farm or we leave the butchery, we want to distribute the meat. We go, to where the meat is to be distributed. If we know people ourselves, poor people, we go to them and we give it to them. We give to family and friends and so on. So most of it is gone, and the part that remains, maybe what we cannot distribute ourselves. If we don't know many poor people and so on, we come, put it in the freezers here at the mosque. And then it will later in the day be picked up and taken to the poor people.
And so does this sacrifice then conclude the whole festival? Not the Hajj itself, but the festival day?
And that is the main part of the festival. But it is also a family day. So when we are done from the distribution of the meat, and many of us also don't actually do the sacrifice ourselves, right? Maybe somebody, one person, somebody representing the entire group will go and do it, and then later on. We have family gatherings, and we have nice meals and that sort of thing, right? It's just the rest of the day is like a day of relaxation. I see that in many places, many communities, they organize it as a community affair. So after the prayer is done, most of the people are not themselves going to do the sacrifice. Maybe the head of the household, or somebody from within the household, but not the entire household, right? And some people will come together, to go to the farm or the butchery and so on, do the sacrifice. They will help each other and bring back the meat and so on. So what do the others do when they're here? Some communities have been organizing activities for them for the rest of the day. To make it an enjoyable day, they may go to a place where there's recreational activities and so on, activities for the kids, games that they can play. Most likely a place outdoors, right? So they can do things outdoors and so on and relax. Of course, especially if the weather permits. Otherwise, there has to be indoors.
And is there a reason why this festival and this celebration, this symbol of what Abraham did, is there a reason why it overlaps with the Hajj? Is there a reason why they kind of come together?
Yes, all of that comes from him, actually. It comes from Abraham. The Kaaba is in Mecca, which is that cube-shaped building. It was built by Abraham. He was basically in Palestine, but he took his son Ishmael and the son's mother Hagar or Hajar. He took them into the Arabian Peninsula from there, right? This was, of course, in the very beginning, you can see. And he left them there. It was near to Mecca, but at that time, Mecca was not populated. It was totally, deserted. Nobody was living there. Very hot and very hot climate and so on, right? Inhospitable almost, right?
Yeah.
And there's no water, nothing. So people were not living in that area. So he left them, the mother and the baby, there, and he left them, and he came back to Palestine. So they were there. They had some food and water, but when that ran out, and then they were left, without anything. And the mother was concerned for the baby, and she started to look, to see if she can see anybody who can help them, or if she can find water. So so she ran between these two hills that are there close to the Kaaba. There was no building at that time, right? So it was entirely deserted. But the two hills were there. So it is reported that she ran from one to the other, one hill to the other. She climbed, each hill she would climb up, look around to see if she can see anybody, or if she can see, maybe water or trees or some place where and there was nothing at all. So she did that 7 times. When we do it, we get tired from that, right? From doing it 7 times. In fact, maybe halfway through we are tired. So we can imagine, what she did, right? She was running and just maybe distraught as a mother and so on, running, trying to find something for the baby. Eventually she comes back where she had left the baby, and she sees that water is gushing there under his feet. So water was provided by God. And
so what she did is sort of what you reflect or symbolize when you do the Hajj.
We do that. We do the exact thing, right?
Yeah.
So we run between these hills, or walk fast and between the hills, and then anyhow, that is known as the well of Zamzam, the Zamzam well. And from since that time to now, it has been flowing. That well has been flowing. And that is something miraculous, because no well continues to flow for so long. Well, actually, for some time in history, it was covered up. So it was not in use. It was not even known. The spot of it was not known. But so all of that was forgotten. Hajar and her child, they continued to live in that area. They were staying close to the water because that is the only thing that they had to survive. And our teaching is that the water itself is miraculous. That comes from that well. It was nourishing for them, so they were able not just to survive, but be in a good, healthy state and so on. And then people who are passing by, travelers. And they knew that area. They knew it to be totally deserted. There's no water there and so on. From afar, they were seeing something, a phenomenon. They were seeing birds, hovering in the sky. They said, this is strange because this place is deserted. There is no food or so that the birds can get, no water. So there must be something strange here for it to be birds. So they went and they saw this woman with the baby, and they saw this well. The water is flowing from the well, and so they camped there, and they made that their home, and that's how Mecca developed and started. The development of Mecca was from that time.
And then the Kaaba was built after that event.
Abraham would come back to visit them on occasions. Perhaps many occasions he came back. And when the boy was big enough to go around, to move around with his father, help him and so on, he was given the command by God to build the Kaaba. He was shown the place where it should be built, where the foundations should be established. And he and his son built it. You know, the son was handing him the son was handing him the bricks, and he was laying the bricks to make the wall.
Was it built
just 4 walls?
Was it built before or after the event of the sacrifice?
After the event.
Okay.
So this would be long after, when the child had grown up sufficiently.
Yeah.
Maybe almost in his teens or so, right? So at that time it was built. But there are other things that are said about the Kaaba. Many Muslim scholars, in fact, from our sources, there's an indication that the Kaaba was there from the time of Adam. From the time of Adam. Because Adam and his immediate descendants, his children, they had to have a place to worship God, right? So the Kaaba was built at that time, in the time of Adam. But in history, it became destroyed, and so even the spot of it, was lost. People could not recognize where it was until long after, in the time of Abraham. God showed him that spot again where it should be built, and so he and his son erected the Kaaba.
Okay.
So most of our scholars say that this is not the first building that was there in that spot.
Okay.
It was there before, but it became destroyed, and the place was lost until Abraham came, when God showed him the spot, and it was rebuilt. And from that time, of course, it has been in existence, and Muslims have been making pilgrimage. Muslims. We consider everybody who is obedient to God and so to be Muslims.
Yeah.
So the followers of Abraham, his descendants, the descendants of Ismail and so on, they continue to live in that area in Mecca, and they did all of the things that was established by Abraham. The pilgrimage, all of the rites and rituals of the pilgrimage were established by Abraham. After the Kaaba was built. The Quran says that God told him that he should make a pronouncement to mankind, that they should come to make the pilgrimage to the house. And this was after the house was built, after the Kaaba was built. So he said, I'm just one man, who will hear my voice, right? And God says to him that you just make the proclamation, and I will convey your voice to everyone. And so, the tradition is that everybody who responds, who goes to the pilgrimage, and that will be so until the Day of Judgment, until the end of the world, they're all responding to the call of Abraham that God, asked him to make.
And everyone is expected, if they are physically able to go on the Hajj at least once, right?
Physically and financially, yes. At least once. I mean, that would be what we say, is the compulsory time. If you have the means and the health and so on to go, then you have to do it, right? So that is compulsory for every Muslim.
And that's only over this time period. You can only do the Hajj during a certain time of the year.
Yes, at this time of the year, which is the 12th month of the Islamic year, the last month. And we've been talking about the 8th, the actual Hajj, starts the 8th, and then the 10th is the day of the festival, the sacrifice, and the Hajj continues for a few more days, 3 more days after that.
Do people continue to visit the Kaaba and stuff throughout the year, even when it's not the Hajj?
Yes.
Okay.
There is what we call a lesser pilgrimage, Umrah, it has a different term in Arabic. And is usually translated as the lesser pilgrimage. So people can do that in the entire, any part of the year.
Okay.
And these days you have a steady stream of people, in fact, many people going there. I went there in December, which is, of course, the time for the Hajj is now, right? So I went in December. And the place was packed almost as if it was Hajj time. And people keep going. And then after that came Ramadan, the month of fasting.
Yeah.
And a lot of people like to go and spend Ramadan there, and perhaps especially the last 10 days of Ramadan, and celebrate the Eid, the first Eid, Eid al-Fitr there, which is the day after the month of fasting. So if you were to go at that time, it would be millions of people are there, almost like the Hajj.
Yeah.
They hardly space to move in the in the mosque, and hardly space to move and so on. But you don't we don't go to Mina and Arafat. These are the places that I called, that I mentioned, right? Mina, Arafat, Muzdalifah. We don't go to those places during the rest of the year. We stay in Mecca, and we do what is called the tawaf, or circumambulation around the Kaaba 7 times, and then we have water to drink from the well of Zamzam, and we pray at the mosque there, the regular kind of prayers and so on that we do here, and we also go to the 2 hills, Safa and Marwa, and run between them. So it's some of the acts of the major Hajj we do, but not all of them, not all of the acts.
And before we conclude, because I was looking at time there, we have about maybe 10-15 minutes left. I just wanted to maybe get a personal account from you of your first Hajj. What was that like? Well, when was it? What was the experience like? I just kind of wanted to get like sort of a perspective point of view on the Hajj.
Well, before I went on the Hajj itself, I went on Umrah, a minor pilgrimage, and so that helped me a lot. To myself and my wife, we became familiar with the place, and how we should move, from one place to another, what the movements are, and so on. And especially, if there's a large crowd, you can get lost very easily, right? So it's good that we knew the whole area firsthand. So when we went on the Hajj a year or so after that, it was quite easy for us.
What year would this have been?
This was, I think, around 2009.
Okay.
And yes, and then later on I went back with him, and then I went back other times also. So everything is everything that we see there, everything that we do there has an impact upon us, right? Because we are in the Holy Land. The Kaaba is a place that we turn to in every prayer. We have been doing that all our lives and so on, never seeing the Kaaba except in pictures, right? So this is when you're seeing it in reality, you're actually there. The impact on seeing it, for the first time is tremendous, right? Very, very emotional, very, very spiritually uplifting.
And how close are you allowed to get to the Kaaba? Like I've seen the videos before of like either videos and photos of the large circle of people around the Kaaba. Like how close are you allowed to actually get to it? Like
you can get as close as you can, right? Touch it. Many people like to touch the Kaaba. Well, it is draped with curtains. There are curtains around it.
So is that the ones I've seen before in the pictures is like it's like black with a gold trim.
Yes.
Is that the curtain or is that the
That is the curtain. That is the curtain. But the walls are immediately there. If you lift it, you'll find the walls immediately. But most people will just be, not most people, very few, out of the millions, very few people will be able to go that close because of the crowd, only because of the crowds. People want to do that. They want to go there to touch the Kaaba, at least even to touch the curtains.
Did you get the chance to?
Yes, I did get a chance to do that. So you can, especially the other times in the year, in the Hajj time, it is much more difficult because so many people are trying to do it at the same time. It's not easy. And then you have a difficulty, when you're circumambulating around the Kaaba, you have to go step by step, try to get closer. Every circuit that you make, right, you try to get closer to the Kaaba. And then you have to do that also to get out of the area because the crowds are so intense, right? And while I think that people don't push each other, deliberately, but it happens, right? People are so close to each other. It's almost you're feeling the pressure from others who are close to you. So when you're at the at the wall of the Kaaba itself, you can't stay there for very long. Also, you might feel your wall is here and the people are behind you, right?
Mm-hmm.
It can be too much pressure. So you have to move out as quickly as possible. And of course, you give way to others who are coming after you. So it's an intense experience, but it is all spiritual. You feel the spirituality there. And every prayer that you make, every time that we pray the normal ritual prayers that we do here, when we do it there, it has like an additional meaning because you're now actually, seeing the building itself in front of you, right? And
Okay.
you're praying and so on. Yeah.
You mentioned the unity, brotherhood aspect, and then Malcolm X.
Yeah. If you if you have seen videos of the Hajj and people circumambulating around the Kaaba, it seems to be like a very smooth, continuous flow of people all around, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Right, and the outer lines are very far away from the Kaaba itself, right? Very difficult. As I mentioned, when you're in the crowd itself, you do feel the pressure of other people close to you and so on, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not easy, and you have to be going almost very slow steps, right? You should go. So,
And is it like the masjid, the mosque here, where you take off your shoes and stuff? Do you take off your shoes and stuff to go visit the Kaaba as well?
yes, we do that. Especially because in the building there's a building that is surrounding the Kaaba. And there is the inner part of it, which is not, is not covered. There's no roof there, right? That is closer to all around, the Kaaba. So when in going to the Kaaba, you have to pass through the building, which is covered, right? Which has a roof and everything, and they have carpets for people to pray inside of it. They're tiled, all of it is tiled, including all the way to the Kaaba is tiled. But in order to pass through that part of it, we have to take off our shoes. A lot of people will wear something like slippers in order to make the circumambulation around the Kaaba. And as Brother Ahmed was referring to, when Malcolm X made the Hajj, it was such a unique experience for him because of the brotherhood that he saw there. People from all over the world, all colors, all languages, and so on. You're so close to them, you're interacting with them. Maybe you're in the camps with them, Mina and Arafat and so on. You're eating together with them, you're sitting together, praying together with them, and so on. So it's a unique experience. The brotherhood is tremendous. The Quran itself forbids any argumentation during the Hajj. So just imagine, I think it is really unique. 2 million people, 2.5 million people to 3 million people being together in one spot, and everybody refraining themselves from any argument whatsoever. It is such a unique experience.
Mm-hmm.
So we went through all of that, and when we left, when I came back, the impression that it caused, for several weeks I was dreaming of it. All the things, I don't know, maybe Ahmad also. Several weeks after, I was dreaming of the whole experience again. It was so unique. But everything everything about the Hajj is reflecting what happened to Abraham, or what he did. The rites and rituals of the Hajj that he established. And so we are thinking of that also, and that connection is there. It is not just a connection with Abraham, who, of course, he's known as the patriarch, right? He is known in Islam as the father of prophets, because after his time, all of the prophets were his descendants.
Yeah.
from his descendants, right? All the prophets of the Bible, you know, from his line, right? So we're thinking of all of that, you know, there's all of that connection, you know, with all of the prophets through him. There is a statement of the Prophet Muhammad that there was no prophet excepting that he made the pilgrimage to the Kaaba. All of the prophets made pilgrimage to the Kaaba. This is not, you can't see that in the Bible, unless perhaps you look very closely, very deeply, right? But it may be there to some extent, like Moses, who I think knew the usual story that is told of Moses. You know, after he left Egypt to the children of Israel and so on. And what is the route that they took? These days, there are people, historians and archaeologists and others, right? Scientists and so on, who have been examining that matter for ages. And many of them have come to the conclusion that he and the children of Israel went at the bottom of the Sinai Peninsula. It's when they crossed over, they went into the Sinai Peninsula, and at the bottom, you know, the southernmost part, right, of the Sinai Peninsula. And from there, they crossed over, you know, some water and reached into the Arabian Peninsula. And they're they're looking at, you know, a specific mountain range where they would have been, and perhaps the real Sinai, the real Sinai where Moses received the Ten Commandments, you know, and so on, was in the Arabian Peninsula. This is, you know, the findings of a lot of these historians and archaeologists and geographers and so on, you know, who've been examining that matter. So the prophets, you may question, you know, how is it that they could have had a chance to make the pilgrimage to Mecca? It is very possible because all of them lived around that area. So we believe, and so when we think of all of that, right, and the connection that we have with these prophets, all of them, what was their basic message was Islam. What is Islam? The first pillar of Islam is the recognition of one God, right? The oneness of God, Tawheed, monotheism. That's the main teaching in Islam, and that He alone is supposed to be worshipped. So everything that we do after, all of the things that we do in Islam is the worship of God, that one God, right? So we have the prayers 5 times a day. We have fasting in Ramadan. We have the Hajj itself. Everything is to worship God alone, to focus on God. And who are the people who helped us to do that? They are the prophets, because they brought that to mankind. They brought that teaching, one God. And this is the God that we are all supposed to be worshiping. So Abraham, and in several places in the Quran, even speaking about Abraham, you know, it says that he was not an idolater. He was not a worshipper of many gods and so on. He worshipped only one God. So that is emphasized in the life of Abraham. So when we think of him, you know, we think of that matter, the message that he gave, which is the worship of one God. Of course, Ismail, we believe that Ismail was also made a prophet when he grew up. We also believe that he was the one who was to be sacrificed.
I recently did a video actually about the differences between Christianity, Judaism, and Islam in regard to the whole Abraham's account and the sacrifice and stuff. But although we believe that Isaac was a prophet, so he was also a very righteous person. And he was born right after. He was announced to be born right after the sacrifice event, if I remember correctly. Am I correct? When the Ishmael and Abraham come back, or it's announced that Isaac will be born, or something along those lines, or am I mistaken?
That is how it is put in one chapter of the Quran. I think Surah Safat, that's the name of it in Arabic. In that chapter of the Quran, It talks about the son who was given to, when he prayed for a son, when he did not have, and he was reaching old age and so on, and he prayed for a son, and that son was granted to him. And then when the son was of age, he went about with him when, as I mentioned, they built the Kaaba and so on, right? So and then he was called to sacrifice. That's from our point of view is that son. Although the name is not mentioned, but it is mentioned in that sequence, right?
Yeah.
So they built the Kaaba, they did the Hajj, the rites of the Hajj and so on, and then he was called on to make a sacrifice, and he told his son he's going to sacrifice. He is commanded to sacrifice him, and his son said, "My father, go ahead and do as you are commanded."
Okay.
He recognizes that this is a command from God.
Yeah.
Unlike the Bible speaks about Isaac as being the sacrifice, and says that Abraham and Isaac and other helpers and so on were going along, and they had all of the things to make a sacrifice. Isaac knew that they were going to make a sacrifice, but as they were going along, Isaac asked him, well, where is the animal itself to be sacrificed? We have the rope, we have the knife, we have everything else, but there is no animal.
Yeah.
And Abraham tells him that, wait, we'll get the animal. The sacrifice.
Abraham specifically says God will provide.
God will provide, yes.
Yeah.
He says God will provide. Whereas in the Islamic story, in what is mentioned in the Quran, is that he told his son beforehand, I see in a dream that I'm sacrificing you. What do you say? And then his son says, well, go ahead and do as you're commanded. This is a command from God. Go ahead and do it. And so, but it doesn't matter. There were perhaps in the past, some Muslim scholars, early Muslim scholars, who did hold that the son to be sacrificed was Isaac. We don't have a problem with that, whichever son it was, because both of them were righteous. Both of them were, made prophets afterwards, and so we consider, all of them to have been sinless and so on, and they would have laid down their life for God. So there is no problem with it, except, historically it had to be one of them. Some of the other things that are different, like in the story between what is mentioned in the Bible and the Quran, is that when the Bible mentions that it is because Sarah became jealous. Right? She saw the two boys together.
Yeah.
Now Isaac was born 14 years after Ishmael, so there's a huge age gap between them, right? And of course, Ishmael is already a boy. He's maybe in his teens or whatever, right? When Isaac would be old enough to be able to go with him and play with him and so on.
Yeah.
So it would take some time, right? Now the Bible mentions that when she is taken away, Hagar and her child is taken away, it speaks about the child as being like a baby, and that is not understandable. That cannot be accurate at all, because Isaac was born 14 years after Ishmael. So Ishmael could not have been a baby at the time when he was taken to Mecca, according to the Bible. If I
know what you're referring to,
but but in our sources, in the Islamic sources, he was a baby when he was taken to Mecca. He and his mother were taken to Mecca when he was a baby. So the whole story, there has to be some other explanation for it. But anyhow, we remember all of those prophets when we are on the Hajj. And we think about them not only worshiping God, but even to the extent of being there in the Hajj, performing the Hajj, and so all of them in their own lifetime, in their own time, performing the Hajj and so on. So we are following in their footsteps. We are following in the footsteps of Abraham. And whatever they did, all of those prophets, whatever they did and whatever they preached and so on, these are things that we should always remember and we should always practice. No deviation from the worship of one God, and no other kind of corruption in your life, doing the wrong things, disobeying God and so on. None of that. So a person should come away with the pure feelings of monotheism and the worship of God and living an upright life and so on. That is something that should continue with him afterwards. So this is the kind of feeling that we had when we were there and when we came away from that place. It is something that keeps something you cannot forget. You can never forget that experience.
All right. Well, thank you. I know you have to go. So thank you for being a part of this, and thank you everyone for listening. And as always, go out there and light the world yourselves.